So I wanted to come on here and talk with you about the latest blog post that I wrote, which is 5 signs of a healthy cycle. And I was motivated to write that because we just aren't taught about our cycles in general as women. And it gives us so much insight into our health, especially our hormonal health. And sometimes it can get a little bit confusing. So I wanted to outline actually within your cycle, what are we caring about? And this matters if you, definitely if you're trying to conceive, you're probably a little bit more aware of your cycle. It's one of the first things that you're doing is that you're looking at what is your cycle telling you? Are you ovulating? When are you ovulating, etc. But I just wanted to also emphasize that this is actually really important for women in general. No matter from adolescence through menopause or to menopause, it's really important to pay attention to these things. It gives you so much insight. So that was the motivation behind it. So I wanted to talk to you first about when we say cycle, what am I actually talking about? So the reproductive cycle is from day 1 of your period to day 1 of your next period.
Yeah, which is bleeding.
Which
like
is
day 1 of bleeding, yeah, to the next, yeah.
Yeah, so, and you don't minus the days that you're actually bleeding. Some people do that. So it's literally like day 1 of bleeding to day 1 of bleeding. And so that's anywhere from like 21 days to 28 days to 30 days. So, and you also do not count the days that if you're spotting before you start your period, you don't count those as day 1. So day 1 is going to be the first day of actually like your full flow. Okay, so the first healthy sign is going to be the length of that cycle of your cycle. So in Chinese medicine, we like a cycle that's no shorter than 26 days and no longer than 32 days. And that essentially is just considered like a balanced cycle. And what that is showing more in conventional terms is that actually your hormonal balance is looking really good. So ideally, it's 28 days. And your cycle is largely determined actually by the day when you ovulate. So the rise in the hormone estrogen begins from basically this day 3 of your period and then peaks at ovulation. And then the next hormone, progesterone, is from ovulation to day 1. So when you have a nice balance between estrogen and progesterone, that's a good like 28-day cycle. If your cycles are shorter, so anything less than 26 days or conventionally more like 21 days, that means that you're ovulating really early. And so that means that estrogen hasn't gotten a chance to really build up. And if you're ovulating or if you have longer cycles, so over 32 days, over 35 days, something like that, that means that it's basically like your follicles and you're ovulating like much slower. So estrogen is taking a longer time to build and to rise to signal ovulation. So the balance is right there in the middle. It's right there around 14 days, so something like that. So that cycle length, the next sign of a healthy cycle is going to be your periods. So from a holistic, natural Chinese medicine perspective, we really care about how much you're bleeding. So we'd like to look at the quantity of the bleeding, the color of the bleeding, are there clots, and is there any pain? So those are the aspects of your period that we really take into account, and you can check out the blog for the parameters in terms of what is considered like optimal or the healthiest sign of your period. The third healthy sign is going to be no spotting or bleeding outside of your period. So you start your period and then you end your period, and then really no spotting or bleeding until your next period starts. And this actually includes spotting during ovulation or spotting prior to your period. So really just no spotting or bleeding.
Yeah. And then the next one in her blog that she wrote was PMS. And this is something that people often think is totally normal, that some amount of PMS, cravings, mood changes, irritability, bloating, gas, bowel changes, like any of that, it's actually not normal. You shouldn't have them, especially if they're anything worse than very mild. So if we're talking about like moderate to severe changes right before your period, that's not normal, and it's probably suggestive of some sort of a hormone imbalance. So there's a lot we can work with there. And then the last one is cervical mucus. So This is kind of the opposite of the PMS. Like people think that cervical mucus is abnormal, when actually it's totally normal, and it's a necessity. And it changes throughout the cycle based on your hormones. So as estrogen rises and then progesterone takes over, the consistency of your cervical mucus will change. And the progression is different, the amount is different. It's going to be different for everybody, so don't get too hung up on it. But in general, what we're most looking for is that egg white consistency around ovulation, which will stretch between your fingers, because that consistency will be most likely to help the sperm survive and be able to travel up the cervix and into the fallopian tubes to actually fertilize the egg. So some amount is normal, be paying attention to it. And it's empowering to actually even notice that you're having these changes. A lot of people, until you start trying to conceive, you don't even realize that it's changing. It's just like something that you notice in your underwear from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, those are the signs. And so essentially, like when, if you know anybody that's trying to get pregnant, or just in terms of having any like issues with their period, things like that, it's really a good idea to actually look at these 5 parameters and not just the bleeding. There's so much that's emphasized, just like, are your periods heavy? Are they painful? Are you having them? If not, then you're fine. And actually there is so much more that goes into that, and so much more that actually women can do to help that, to not only feel better and balance their hormones, but then obviously optimize their fertility as well. So those are the 5 main things that go into that. And I think that's it. Thanks for joining us.
Have a good day, guys.
Thanks.